They thought they were dealing with just another suburban family. HOA enforcers barged in, shoving my wife to the ground over a petty violation. But what they didn't know? I was a retired Navy SEAL, trained for war, skilled in tactics, and about to teach them a brutal lesson. The morning had started peacefully. The kind of quiet morning that only a small suburban neighborhood could provide. Birds chirped lazily, sunlight streamed through freshly trimmed hedges, and sprinklers ticked in rhythmic arcs across perfectly green lawns. Inside the modest two-story house at the end of the cul-de-sac, Elena Carter tied her sneakers and grabbed a water bottle. A quick jog around the neighborhood was her daily routine, a moment of freedom before work calls and emails would flood her day. As she stepped outside, she noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Two men leaned casually against it, both wearing dark tactical vests labeled HSD in bold white letters. HOA Security Division. Elena frowned. The HOA had been sending letters lately, ridiculous complaints about the height of their hedges, the shade of paint on their shutters, even a claim about unauthorized decorations because she had hung a wind chime on the porch. Her husband, Jack Carter, had grumbled about it but told her not to worry. "They're bored little tyrants," he'd said. "Ignore them." But this didn't look like boredom. This looked like trouble. As Elena jogged down the driveway, one of the men stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said sharply, "need you to stop right there." She slowed. "Is there a problem?" "Violation." "Notice," the man replied, pulling a folded sheet from his vest pocket. "You've been warned twice. Today it gets addressed." Elena blinked. "Addressed? It's a wind chime." "Ma'am, don't make this difficult," the second man said, moving closer. Her heart rate picked up. Something about the way they carried themselves, like they owned the place, made her uneasy, and then it happened. When she reached for the paper, the first man suddenly grabbed her wrist. Hard. "Hey!" she shouted. "What are you doing?" Before she knew it, she was shoved backward. She stumbled onto the grass, landing on her hip with a gasp of pain. Inside the house, Jack Carter saw it all through the front window. The man who had spent 12 years in the Navy SEALs didn't panic easily. But watching two strangers manhandle, his wife flipped a switch deep inside him. He was out the door in seconds. "Get your hands off her," Jack growled, his voice low, dangerous. The two enforcers turned. One smirked, the other tensed. "Sir, stay back," the smirking one said. "This is HOA business. Private property or not, we have authority." Jack walked closer, his calm steps belying the storm building in his chest. "Authority?" he said. "You just assaulted my wife." "She resisted," the man said flatly. "She reached for a piece of paper," Jack snapped. "That's not resisting. That's you crossing a line." The man's smirk faltered. The other enforcer shifted, uneasily. "Sir, step back or we will restrain you too." Jack stopped 3 feet away, his eyes locked on the man who had shoved Elena. He could smell the man's cologne, see the twitch in his jaw, hear the faint click as the man adjusted his tactical gloves. He recognized the type instantly. Wannabe, soldiers, men who wore vests and boots to feel powerful but had never seen real combat. And right now, they were making the biggest mistake of their lives. The air around the cul-de-sac thickened as Jack Carter stood his ground. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Elena was on the grass, holding her arm, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Jack took one slow step forward. "Last chance," he said softly, his tone calm but edged with steel. "Get off my property." The man in the HSD vest chuckled, puffing his chest like a rooster. "Sir, we're HOA security. You touch us, it's assault on an officer." Jack smiled faintly. A humorless smile, the kind soldiers gave before chaos erupted. "Officer?" he said quietly. "You're a rent-a-cop in a vest." The man's face darkened. He shoved Jack in the chest. That was it. Jack's right hand shot up like a cobra, trapping the man's wrist in a brutal joint lock. In the same fluid motion, Jack twisted, pivoted, and sent the man sprawling face first into the grass. The move was so fast, so surgical, the second enforcer froze mid-step, his confidence bleeding out like air from a punctured tire. "Whoa! Hey!" he shouted, fumbling for his radio. Jack turned, his stance solid, shoulders squared. "Go ahead, call them." Within minutes, police cars screeched onto the scene, lights flashing. By now, neighbors were filming from porches, whispers rising, like wind through trees. The first officer out of the squad car took one look at Jack holding the enforcer pinned and barked, "Sir, release him, now!" Jack stood slowly, hands raised. "Glad you're here, officer. My wife was assaulted on our lawn." The HOA enforcer scrambled to his feet, face red, shouting, "He attacked me! I'm pressing charges!" The officer frowned, glancing at Elena, clutching her arm, at neighbors pointing, murmuring, showing videos on their phones. One neighbor spoke loudly. "I saw it all. That guy shoved his wife first. No warning. No reason." The second enforcer sputtered, "We had authority." "Authority?" Jack cut in, his voice sharp now. "I served 12 years in the Navy SEALs. I know authority, and I know when. A man abuses power because he thinks no one will stop him." The officer turned to the enforcers. "You work for the HOA?" "Yeah," one muttered. "Not the police?" "No, sir." The officer's jaw tightened. "Then here's the thing. You've got zero jurisdiction to lay a hand on anyone. And right now, it looks like you two are the ones facing charges." The enforcer who had shoved Elena went pale. Jack knelt beside his wife. "You okay, honey?" She nodded faintly, tears streaking her face, anger simmering beneath. "I'm fine. Now." The officers began separating everyone, statements taken, the HOA president called down from his cozy house 3 streets over. By the time the sun dipped low, the story had shifted completely, from homeowner attacks HOA security to HOA security assaults innocent woman. The revelation spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. And Jack Carter? The retired Navy SEAL who had once fought terrorists overseas had just exposed a different kind of bully right here in suburbia. The story didn't end on the grass that day. By the next morning, the video of the confrontation had spread across social media like wildfire. Clips of the HOA enforcers shoving Elena, followed by Jack's lightning-fast takedown, hit neighborhood, Facebook pages, then local news sites, and by nightfall it was on regional TV. The headline read, "HOA security assaults woman, retired Navy SEAL husband steps in, video goes viral." The HOA board scrambled into damage control. They released a bland statement about misunderstandings and temporary suspensions, but it was too late. The public was furious. Lawyers called, civil rights groups weighed in. The police department opened an official investigation into the HOA's so-called security division. And for Jack and Elena, the days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, interviews, and neighbors stopping by with food, sympathy, and stories about the HOA's history of harassment. The courtroom. Showdown 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. On one side, the HOA board members sweating under their suits. The 2 enforcers, now facing charges for assault and impersonating law enforcement, sat stone-faced, their once arrogant stares replaced by nervous flickers. On the other, Jack and Elena, calm but resolute. When the judge asked for Jack's testimony, he stood tall, shoulders square, voice steady. "I served this country for 12 years, Jack said. I've seen real authority, real law enforcement, real courage. What I saw that day wasn't authority. It was bullying. And it nearly hurt my wife." Elena squeezed his hand. Neighbors testified. Videos played. The jury watched silently as the enforcer's actions replayed again and again from every angle. By the end of the week, the verdict was clear. The enforcers were guilty of assault. The HOA board was fined heavily for hiring unlicensed security. New state regulations were proposed to limit HOA power abuses. After the trial, Jack and Elena could have quietly returned to their lives. But something had changed. Neighbors began asking Jack to speak at community meetings about rights, safety, and standing up to intimidation. Local veterans groups invited him to share his story. One evening, sitting on their porch as the sun dipped low, Elena smiled at him. "You know," she said softly, "you're turning into the guy people call when there's trouble." Jack chuckled. "Guess I traded one battlefield for another. But it wasn't war this time. It was justice, fairness, making sure no one else got pushed around in their own neighborhood ever again." Months later, the same cul-de-sac was quiet again. Kids rode bikes, neighbors waved, lawns stayed green. The HOA had new leadership, people, who believed in helping, not harassing. Jack and Elena sat on their porch swing, sipping coffee, watching the sunset. The wind chime, yes, that wind chime, danced softly in the breeze. For the first time in a long time, life felt peaceful again, and this time, everyone knew better than to mess with the Carters. In a world where power can be abused, even in our own neighborhoods, courage and justice still shine through. Jack Carter's story reminds us that sometimes standing up to the bullies changes everything. This was Hidden Compass Stories, where every tale uncovers a truth worth hearing. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the battles, big and small, happening all around us.